great to see you, and it's great to be here. I feel like I have some connection to all of you. I watched very closely over the past few years as you were dealing with your Scott Walker problem, and we were dealing with our John Kasich problem, and I watched very closely, and I feel like I know Phil because I've seen him on TV so much, on Big Ed Schultz Show, and lots of other programs while that was all going on. And I think it reminds all of us of the fight we have on our hands, the kind of issues that we have to deal with every single day, that working class people have to deal with. And so it's great to be here with you just to share a few moments together to figure out and talk about how we can make a big difference, not just for ourselves, but for a lot of people around the country who don't even know we're doing the work that we're doing. I come from an area just outside of Youngstown, Ohio, a working class area, and for the longest time I was a congressman, but I was single. And some of you may remember being single, where you can kind of do what you want, when you want. And then you get married. So I was a single congressman for a while, and then about 3 years ago I got married, and things changed a little bit, and then I got married to a woman who had 2 kids. So I went from being single to being married with 2 kids. So my wife got rid of her place, I got rid of my place, so we got some neutral territory. And so what do you do when you get married to a woman who has 2 kids and you get a new house? You got to go out and get a dog, right? So we go out to get a dog, and then what happens when you go out to get a dog with 2 kids? You get 2 dogs. So I go from being single to being married with 2 kids and 2 dogs, and then we had a baby 2 years ago, so little Brady's there now, so now 3 kids, and someone asked me, are you going to go out and get another dog? And I said, hell no, I'm not going to do that. So the most amazing thing happened a few months back. I was in my family room, and I noticed something I hadn't noticed for a couple of years, and it was called silence. It was about 10 o'clock at night, and my wife and the kids and the dogs were all upstairs in bed. Probably in the same bed, but they were all upstairs sleeping. So what's a guy from Youngstown, Ohio do when he's sitting in the family room and realizes that everyone's asleep upstairs? You grab the remote control, because I hadn't seen it in months. We've got Paw Patrol on and Bubble Guppies and all kinds of stuff. So I get the remote control, and then what do you flip through, right? You try to find something cool to watch. You got to find a sports channel, right? So I find a sports channel, and I'm flipping through, and they're doing a documentary on Jimmy Valvano. Remember Jimmy V? Yes. He was the best, right? So they have this documentary on the 1983 North Carolina State basketball team, and Jimmy V's up there and he's giving this speech. And he says, God must have loved ordinary people because he made so many of us. But every day, ordinary people do extraordinary things. Every day, in so many, many different ways, ordinary people do extraordinary things. And when I think of the union movement, when I think of my grandfather who was a steel worker for 40 years, treasurer of his union, and my cousins who were plumbers and pipe fitters and worked all throughout the different trades, I think that that's the essence of the union movement. That's the essence of the Democratic Party. How can we help ordinary people do extraordinary things? That's what's at the heart and soul of the fight that we're in today against very powerful corporate interests, and nobody in working class America knows better how powerful and how much money can be spent against working class people to manipulate facts and try to gut the union movement. Nobody knows better than you. So I'm not going to tell you anything you don't already know. But I will tell you that I grew up in Youngstown, Ohio, and we saw a collapse of the steel industry, in the 1970s, the late 1970s. And we've seen an erosion of our manufacturing base. We've seen pensions go belly up. Thank God for the PBGC. Thank God for Social Security, or we'd have so many of our senior citizens that would be living in squalor right now if it wasn't for the union and the Democratic Party that pushed the programs that we have today. And we've had a lot of politicians come through town, as I'm sure you have, over the last 30 or 40 years telling us they're going to bring the big steel mills back. We're going to have 20,000 jobs again in one steel mill. One group came through town when I was a boy growing up, and they said, we're going to build a blimp factory. It was right before the election. We're going to build a blimp factory. And we were so desperate, we believed them. Because we wanted to go to work. We wanted good paying jobs. We wanted everything that a middle class job provides. That's all we wanted. And we'd have people come through and blow a bunch of smoke at us, and then after the election, once again, nothing would happen. It was just rhetoric. It was just someone saying what we wanted to hear before an election. And we've had so many of our people. My cousin was one of them, worked at Delphi. He used to supply General Motors cars, and they moved to Mexico, China. And my cousin Donnie, the best guy, got a job at Delphi, and then he lost it. And his last act at that job, his last assignment, was to unbolt the machine from the factory floor and put it in a box and ship it to China. That's where I come from. That's what you've dealt with, and that's what I fought against my entire 14-year career in Washington. And I take pride in the fact that when I first ran in a primary, the first people, the first soldiers for me were the unions, were the steel workers, because they knew they were going to get someone who lived what they went through and would fight for them. And I take pride in the fact, I'm not here to blow smoke at anybody, but I take pride. A lot of people get up here and they'll demean their job as a congressman, they'll demean the government, they'll run down the government. I'm not here to do that. I'm proud to be a congressman in the United States of America. Like Warren Buffett said, the most important day of my life was the day I was born in the United States. Made all the difference for all of us. So why would I, as a congressman, an officer in that government, an honor to be in the greatest democracy the world has ever seen, not be proud? We should all be proud of where we are, where we come from. We got our ups and downs, and part of being in a democracy is the fight. Part of it for me is being Irish, too. You know, the old Irish saying, is this a private fight or can anyone get into it? So I'm okay with the fight. I'm okay with the give and take, but I'm proud of what the basic American values are. And I'll tell you the one value that I think is most important for our purposes in this coming election is what my grandfather taught me. He was a little old Italian guy. I grew up about 2 blocks from his house. And the school I went to was in between my house and their house. So I would always go to the house after school that my Italian grandmother was at because she was cooking. And so we grew up with them, and then at the end of his life, when he could hardly get around, he said, "Timmy, can you take me shopping, grocery shopping?" I said, "Sure, Grandpa." Now my grandfather turned shopping into an art form. He would go to this store for cheese because it was on sale. Then we'd have to go all the way around town and get the salami and the pepperoni because that was on sale. Then back to the had a 30-pack, I don't know why I remember this, a 30-pack of Miller High Life for $9.99. We had to go get the Miller High Life. And then at the end of that day, I was getting a little impatient. I said, okay, Grandpa, he said, we've got one more stop. I said, great, we'll go right there to that store. I could see it right there. He said, we can't go there. I said, Grandpa, we've been doing this now for how long? Go over here and we go home. He says, we can't go there. The meat cutters are on strike, and we will not cross that picket line. That's how I was raised, that's how you were raised. Basic respect for work. And I just want to tell you something, and I'm going to tell you straight like it is from my heart as I see it, and you can believe me or not believe me or have your own opinions about it. I'm just going to tell you how I feel. I feel like Donald Trump has spent his entire life disrespecting people who take a shower when they get home from work instead of before. That's how I feel about it. This is a guy, he said he's for right to work and he's for all this, fine. That's your position on some of these key issues that we feel strongly about. That's great. I want to look at how you treat people in your personal interactions, right? In your personal and business dealings. This guy goes to Atlantic City to build hotels, and he's done this everywhere. And he says to the contractor, I'll pay you X amount of dollars. And then, after the job is done, and the work is finished, and the hotel is built, he tells the business or the contractor, I give you 50 cents on the dollar. 30 cents on the dollar. You have a problem with that? I'm Donald Trump, I'll tie you up in court. You'll never get paid anything. Because I'm Donald Trump and I'm worth millions. And those small business people went out of business, some of them. And then some of them couldn't pay the plumbers, the pipe fitters, the painters, the union folks who actually did the work, because shit rolls downhill, fellas. Right?
Yep.
So he's screwing the contractor and then screwing the worker. And then he'll file bankruptcy, take the money, and he flies around in planes and has fancy houses and fancy clothes. And then you're going to come into Youngstown or Milwaukee or Madison and say, I'm the one to take on the Chinese. They've been screwing you guys left and right. I'm going to take on Mexico. I'm the one to do it. And then you find out he's making his ties in China and shipping them back. His suits in Mexico and shipping them into the United States. I got to call bullshit on you. I have to. These are my guys. These are my guys. That's my cousin Donnie. That's my grandfather. Those are my friends that elect me to go to Washington to pay attention and represent them. And you think you're going to walk through Youngstown and throw us this line of crap? And we're going to believe it? Because of the stats we just saw? We know times are tough. You ain't the guy to fix it. If you treat us like you treated those workers in Atlantic City, we're more screwed than we thought we were. This is an important election. Do you ever see a guy like Donald Trump get more power and then get humbled? That never happens. You get worse. You think, look, like he said, I could shoot a gun in Fifth Avenue, I'll still get elected. That's not what I want to hear from my leaders. What you need is a plan. A game plan. A plan of action. I played a lot of sports growing up. I was a quarterback in high school. Who cares? But it did define the way I think and try to address challenges and problems. And I know you have a couple football teams in the States. You may get this. Did you think I was going to come here and be nice? Suck up the whole time to you people? Come on. You wouldn't respect me. The over-under on the Browns comment was 10 minutes, so I think whoever bet the over won. You hurt my feelings. I saying?
You're talking about the Packers versus the Browns.
Yes. I love Brett Favre. I know you got a couple of Ohio State guys that play for the Packers, so let's call a truce here. At least for 78 days or whatever the number is. But I think I was saying something about Donald Trump. And I think I was saying something about him not necessarily being directly connected to what our values are. And I don't think he has shown the kind of respect for working class people that is needed in a president of the United States. And that really is what's at stake in this election. And so we all have a responsibility. But we need a plan, right? And what many of you who played sports know the same thing. Because I hear a lot about people are angry. And my people are angry. And I'm angry. You can't watch the slideshow that you just watched and the presentation that you just watched and not be a little bit angry. But when we would lose a game, you know, I had some great old school football coaches. And they would get angry. And there was allegedly a few times during a halftime or maybe after a loss where a garbage can would maybe fly across the locker room. That was alleged. You know, there's no confirmation that that ever happened because all 50 kids in the locker room said that never happened. But allegedly, some coaches got so mad they would do things like that because they were angry. We were all angry. But what's a good coach do after you get angry? You sit down the next day and you take out the game film, no matter how painful it is, and you watch it. And you try to learn from it. What do we do good? What do we do poorly? What can we do better? How can we improve? And then you get out the film of the competition and say, well, what are they doing? What do they do good? What do they do poorly? Where can we exploit some of their weaknesses? And you study them. And then you put a plan together, and then you practice it, and then you try to execute it on game night the next week. You don't stay angry, because if you stay angry, you can't think straight. You can't put a plan together. And we're into the stage now where we better start putting a plan together because we only have 313 million people in our country, and we're competing against 1.4 billion in China, 1.3 billion people in India, global economy, there is technology, there is globalization, there is problems with policies that we need to change here in the United States. We better get our act together. We better get organized. We better get fired up. We better focus on off-year elections as well as presidential elections. We have the same disease that you have in Wisconsin. We have it in Ohio in these off-year election cycles. But Hillary Clinton has a plan for us. I don't want someone coming to tell me a blimp factory or you're going to take care of China. I want to know what the plan is. And what I see with Hillary Clinton's manufacturing plan is a realistic, well thought out game plan for us to resuscitate manufacturing in the United States and get people back to work making wages that can provide a middle class living. That's what Now, this is not pie in the sky stuff. Right? We talk about global climate change, which we all should be very, very concerned about. So how do you take an issue like that and you turn it into an opportunity? Like you would in sports. When I hear about renewable energy, I think manufacturing, and so does Hillary Clinton. There are 8,000 component parts in a windmill. Tons of steel, 500 bolts, a mile of rebar, a mile of concrete, gear shifts, hydraulic. That's what we make in Youngstown, in Akron. That's what we do. Let's do more of that. How do we figure out how to do more of that and then target the investments to communities like Milwaukee and Youngstown and Steubenville in these areas that have been so hard hit and have lost manufacturing with incentives. That's her plan. And if you look at the wages in manufacturing, they're always higher than most wages. And you're getting into advanced manufacturing, you're talking about even higher wages. And then our guys build that stuff. And then our guys maintain it. And then we got to redo the grid. Our guys do that. This is a straightforward 4 yards up the middle. We're going to just block you until we get to the end zone. This is not sexy, right? But it works. If you look at what's happening in Germany, they've got like 300,000 renewable energy jobs. They're projected to have 500,000 in the next few years. And by 2030, they're projected to have 700 and some thousand renewable energy jobs. What are we waiting for? Why is Germany doing that? Why aren't we? Because we don't have anybody that has a plan now, and Hillary has a plan, and she's campaigning on it, and we need to all support her. And I hear this, well, I don't want to have a beer with Hillary Clinton. Well, I'll have a beer with you, okay? Let's all go out and have a beer. I'll drink with you, and we'll let Hillary put the plan together to turn the country around, right? And my coaches that I love, we win games. I didn't like them. I didn't like them until I got older and I learned how much I learned from them. She's a great human being. She spent her life serving other people. Isn't that what we teach our kids? Not to get on TV and bloviate like Donald Trump. I mean, my wife's a first grade teacher. She's like, I teach my kids not to do that stuff. First grade. But the point is, we got real problems. We got real challenges. You know it better than anybody. And now we're to the point in America, we've weathered the storm of the recession. We got hammered. Our GM plant, call it UAW plant, our GM plant went from 16,000 people down to 4,000. Our Delphi plant went from 13,000 now to about 1,000 people. We're all in this together. And people try to divide us. And when you go out and you leave here and you talk to your members, they try to divide us. They try to divide the working class people. Because that's the only way they can control the power in the government, in the tax code, and everything else. Because they divide us. Who's in a union, who's not in a union? Who's in a public sector? This is when we did our big union thing. Who's in a public sector union versus who's in a private sector union? Because if we can divide those two out, then we really start dividing. Who's black? Who's white? Who's gay? Who's straight? Who's a Green Bay fan? Who's a Browns fan? They'll find a million different ways to divide us. We can't let our working class folks fall for that. When we're together, we got Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security and National Labor Relations Act and the National Labor Relations Board and civil rights and all the great things, the interstate highway system, the things that built the damn country happened when my grandfather's generation went through a depression and a war and stayed united to govern the country that had fairness and justice ingrained in everything that was done. That's when we were at our strongest. When union membership was high, when unions were strong, John Rizzi could retire with a decent pension. And you know what? His grandkids became doctors and lawyers, and one even became a congressman. I mean, I'm the bottom feeder of the group, as you can tell. But because of the work he did and the generation that he came out of, his family got stronger and more educated and had a better life. We got to get back to that. And it's not going to be easy, and it's not just going to be on presidential elections. It's got to be all the time. We can do it, guys. We can do it. Anything we put our minds to, we can do. If we have the passion, the energy, and the plan, and the leadership. And that's what we have before us in this election. And it's going to be hard, and it's going to be difficult, but we're going to do it. And I'm going to tell you what Bobby Kennedy told all his crowds when he was running for president. I do not promise you ease, and I do not promise you comfort, but I do promise you these: weariness, hardship, and sacrifice. And with these, I promise you victory. Thank you so much.